Have you ever scrolled through social media and felt that familiar, sinking feeling in your chest? A mix of admiration, envy, and a quiet sense that you're somehow behind. We all play the comparison game. But what if it's not a game at all? What if it's a silent theft of your own unique life force? Everyone tells you to stop comparing yourself to others. It's useless advice. Here's why your habit of comparison isn't a flaw. It's a compass. It's a powerful, misunderstood signal from your soul, pointing directly at what you've exiled in yourself, a part of your own forgotten gold. Instead of trying to silence your envy, we're going to learn how to listen to it. Prepare to see the thief of joy as your most unlikely guide, back to your most authentic self. This journey will take us into the heart of Jungian shadow work to understand the powerful mechanic of projection. We will discover that what we envy in others is often a disowned piece of our own potential, crying out for our attention. This is not another video telling you to practice gratitude. This is not a lecture on self-esteem. This is a roadmap to reclaiming the power you have been unconsciously giving away. It is the art of turning your greatest poison into your most potent medicine. The modern world has put us all in glass houses. Every day, we are exposed to the curated successes, the highlight reels, the carefully constructed personas of others. A constant, endless stream of victories, beautiful vacations, and perfect families. And it is easy to blame social media for the sickness of comparison. But that is only half the story. To blame the screen is to miss the deeper truth. Comparison is a primal human instinct. It is a relic of our tribal past, a way to measure our social standing, to ensure our belonging and survival. It is wired into our DNA. But in the age of the global village, this ancient software is running on overdrive, and it is short-circuiting our souls. Because the true cost of the comparison game is not just that it makes you feel bad. The true cost is that you begin to outsource your sense of self. You begin to define your worth based on an external, ever-shifting scoreboard. A scoreboard that you did not create and that you can never, ever win. Let me tell you about Anna, a 38-year-old mother who runs a small, beautiful online business from her home. She pours her heart into her work, late nights, early mornings. She is talented, she is dedicated, and most days she feels a quiet sense of pride. But then it happens. She's scrolling through her phone during a brief moment of quiet, and she sees a post from a competitor. A sun-drenched family photo, a perfectly minimalist home office in the background, and the announcement of a new product line that is bigger, shinier, more ambitious than anything Anna has planned. And in that instant, the familiar cold knot forms in her stomach. Her own hard work, her own small victories, they all turn to ash in her mind. The quiet pride was replaced by a loud, screaming voice of inadequacy. You are behind. You are not doing enough. You are failing. This is the soundtrack to the collapse of an achievement-based life. Her persona, the creative, successful entrepreneur who balances it all gracefully, suddenly felt like a cheap costume. The invisible scoreboard in her head, the one that tracked her progress against everyone else's, just flashed a giant red fail. The bucket list she had been working on was suddenly worthless because someone else's list seemed so much better. This is the modern epidemic of comparison, a quiet, internal crisis happening millions of times a day in millions of glass houses. We have created a culture where our value is conditional. It is something to be proven day after day against the achievements of others. We have handed the keys to our self-worth to strangers on the internet. We have given them the remote control to our inner peace, and we are left in a constant state of low-grade anxiety, a feeling of being perpetually behind in a race we never consciously signed up for. We are unable to savor our own present joys because our eyes are always fixed on the highlight reel of someone else's life. But what if that scoreboard is the entire illusion? What if the race itself is a fiction? The first step in healing this is to understand the profound psychological transaction that is taking place. When you compare, you are not just looking, you are giving away your power. You are allowing another person's journey to become the standard for your own. You are abandoning the one unique, unrepeatable path of your own soul to walk in the shadow of another's. This is a profound act of self-abandonment. It is the ultimate betrayal of your own becoming. So what is the alternative? Is it to simply look away? To delete the apps? To live in a cave? For some, perhaps. But for most of us, that is not a realistic or sustainable solution. The true path, the Jungian path, is not to look away. It is to look deeper, to look through the image that is causing you pain and to ask a revolutionary question. But what if I told you that the advice to simply stop comparing is the worst advice you could ever receive? It's like telling someone in a storm to just stop the rain. It is impossible, and it only adds shame to the struggle. What if that painful pang of envy is not your enemy at all? What if it's a messenger, a guide, holding a secret map, a map that leads not to their life, but deeper into your own? The green-eyed monster is not a monster at all. It is a geologist of the soul, a master tracker that can lead you back to the richest, most fertile veins of gold, hidden in the darkness of your own inner landscape. To understand this is to change your relationship with envy forever. It requires us to explore one of Carl Jung's most powerful and practical ideas, the concept of projection. Think of your psyche as having a powerful unconscious movie projector. And when we feel a strong, seemingly irrational emotional charge towards another person, a powerful surge of envy, or even intense obsessive admiration, we are often doing something remarkable. We are projecting an unacknowledged part of our own psyche onto them. We are casting a movie of our own inner world onto the screen of their life. But why do we do this? It is a brilliant, if painful, defense mechanism. There are parts of our potential that we were forced to disown as we grew up. The wild artist was told to be more practical. The sensitive mystic was told to be more rational. The bold leader was told not to be so bossy. These powerful parts of us did not die. They were exiled, banished to the unlit territory of our psyche that Jung called the shadow. And this is the radical, life-altering secret. The gold is hidden in the shadow. What we envy in others is often our own undeveloped potential, our own gold that we have exiled into our shadow because at some point in our lives we learned that it was not safe or acceptable to own it for ourselves. We see it in them because we cannot see it in ourselves.
Let's go back to Anna, the 38-year-old mother, feeling like a failure as she looked at her competitor's post. When we looked deeper, beyond the surface envy of success, what was she really feeling? She was envying the other woman's apparent sense of bold, unapologetic confidence, her freedom to launch a big, ambitious project. I asked Anna a simple question. Where in your life is your own bold, unapologetic confidence asking to be seen? There was a long silence, and then tears. She confessed that for years she had dreamed of teaching workshops, of speaking on a stage, of sharing her passion in a bigger way. But she had exiled that part of herself. She told herself, "Who am I to do that? I'm just a small business owner, a mom." The confidence she envied in her competitor was her own exiled inner leader screaming for her attention. Her envy of the competitor's perfect home office? It wasn't about the furniture. It was a projection of her own disowned desire for order, beauty, and sacred space in her own chaotic life. A desire that she had labeled as frivolous or unnecessary. Do you see the alchemy here? The envy was not a sign of her inadequacy. It was a compass, a perfectly calibrated instrument pointing directly to the parts of her own soul that were starving. It was her shadow using the screen of another person's life to try to communicate with her. This is the heart of this work. This pattern is universal. If you find yourself intensely irritated and envious of someone's calm, quiet confidence, it might be your own inner sage, your own capacity for stillness and wisdom that you have neglected in your own busy, frantic life. If you envy someone's physical freedom, their travels, their adventures, it is likely your own inner explorer, your own need for novelty and wildness that has been locked in the basement of practicality. The comparison is not about them. It was never about them. It is a coded message about you. This is where we move from a world of scorecards, of good and bad, better and worse, and we are entering a world of flow, of signals, of a living, breathing psyche that is always trying to move towards wholeness. And we're entering a world of flow, of signals, of a living, breathing psyche that is always trying to move towards wholeness. Your envy is no longer a source of shame. It is a source of information. It is no longer a sign that you are less than. It is a sign that there is more of you waiting to be discovered. The thief of joy becomes the guide to your own treasure. This single idea has the power to end the war of comparison, not by fighting it, but by understanding its secret, compassionate language. So we have a new diagnosis and a new understanding. Envy is not a sin to be confessed. It is a compass to be followed. And this raises the most important question of all. How do we follow it? How do we begin the courageous archaeological dig into our own shadow to reclaim the gold we have given away? That is the journey we take next.
To know that your envy is a compass is one thing. To learn how to read it is another. This is where we move from insight to action. From being a victim of the comparison game to becoming a conscious player in a new, more meaningful one. The ultimate cure for comparison is not to try harder to be like others. It is to become more fiercely, more authentically yourself. This is the heart of what Jung called the journey of individuation. Individuation is the lifelong, sacred process of becoming more fully who you are.
of integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of yourself into a whole, unique, and indivisible self. The great liberation of this path is that it shifts your entire axis of competition. You move from the horizontal axis, the frantic, exhausting game of competing with others, to the vertical axis, the quiet, profound journey of connecting with your own deeper self. On this path, there is only one valid comparison, not between you and them, but between who you are today and who you were yesterday. Individuation is a journey, not a race. So how do we begin this journey using the compass of our envy? How do we turn these painful moments of comparison into sacred opportunities for growth? The first practice is the cornerstone of this work. It is a journaling practice I call envy as a compass. The next time you feel that familiar, painful pang of envy, that feeling of less than when you see someone else's life, do not push it away. Do not shame yourself for it. Instead, get curious. Open a journal and ask this one powerful question. What is the quality in this person that my soul is calling for? What part of me is asking to be seen? Let's go back to Anna. When she felt that pang of envy towards her competitor's bold, unapologetic confidence, she asked this question. And the answer that came through her pen was a revelation. My soul is calling for my own voice. The part of me that wants to teach, to lead, to be seen is asking to be let out of the basement. This was the beginning of her excavation. The envy was not telling her to be more like her competitor, it was telling her to be more like her own forgotten self. This is shadow work in its most practical form. It is using the trigger of the outer world to illuminate the treasure hidden in your inner world. The second practice is about reclaiming your power over your environment. I call it the media diet. If you were trying to heal your body, you would not surround yourself with junk food. The same is true for your soul. Your social media feed is a form of psychic food, and you have the power to choose what you consume. This is not about deleting all your apps in a fit of frustration. It is about conscious curation. For 1 week, I invite you to become a mindful gatekeeper of your own attention. Unfollow accounts that consistently make you feel small or inadequate. Mute the voices that trigger your deepest insecurities. And consciously, intentionally, seek out voices that inspire you, that nourish you, that reflect back to you, not what you lack, but what is possible. This is not an act of avoidance. It is an act of radical self-care. It is taking back control of your inputs so that you can begin to generate a new output. An output sourced from your own center, not from the noise of the crowd. The final practice is about strengthening your own internal system of validation, so that the applause of the world becomes pleasant, but not necessary. This is the practice of celebrating micro-wins. The journey of individuation is not made of giant leaps. It is made of 1,000 tiny, courageous steps, and each one must be honored. Let's imagine Anna again. After her journaling revelation, she took one small step. She didn't launch a massive workshop. She simply recorded a 5-minute video on her phone sharing one piece of her expertise and posted it to her story. It was terrifying, Her inner critic was screaming, but she did it. That evening, her micro-win practice was not to check the views or the likes. It was to put a hand on her heart and say to herself, "You were afraid, and you did it anyway. You honored the voice of your inner leader today. I am proud of you." This is how you build a new foundation. Not on the shifting sands of external approval, but on the bedrock of your own consistent, self-compassionate action. You become your own greatest cheerleader. These practices, envy as a compass, the media diet, and celebrating micro-wins, they are the tools of the archaeologist. They are how you begin to dig for the gold in your shadow and bring it back into the kingdom of your conscious life. The final goal of this journey is to cultivate what can be called unconditional self-worth, a sense of your own value that is inherent, innate, and completely immune to the highlight reels of others. It comes from the consistent practice of self-connection, of honoring your own unique journey, of listening to the messages revealed by your own heart. This is the true end of the comparison game.
And so the game changes, not because you have learned a new strategy to win, but because you have realized you were never meant to play. The endless scrolling through other people's lives no longer needs to be a source of pain. It can become a form of psychological archaeology. Every pang of envy is a signal, a breadcrumb on the trail back to your own buried treasure. You are no longer a passive consumer of other people's stories. You are becoming an active student of your own. The gold you once projected onto others, the light you unconsciously gave away, you are now learning to mine from your own sacred land. This is the great shift from looking outward in desperation to looking inward with curiosity. The journey of individuation is not about becoming a perfect, polished version of yourself that is immune to comparison. That is the ego's game, repackaged. The true journey is about becoming a person who is so deeply rooted in their own unique soil that the winds of other people's successes can blow past without uprooting you. It is a practice, not a destination. It is a practice of pausing, a practice of asking, a practice of listening to the quiet, insistent language of your own soul. This is how you begin to cultivate unconditional self-worth, a sense of your own value that is not for sale, a worth that is not determined by your follower count, your job title, or how your life stacks up against anyone else's. It is a quiet, unshakable knowing that your journey is yours, and that is its own sacred perfection. It does not need to be validated because it is valid. The ultimate freedom from the comparison game is not to believe that you are better than anyone else. It is the profound, peaceful, and liberating realization that you are simply, finally, uncomparable. And so is everyone else. This is not the end of the work. It is the end of the war against yourself, and it is the beginning of a life lived from a place of deep inner sufficiency. So I invite you to one final small act of alchemy. The next time you feel the urge to compare, the next time you feel that familiar sinking feeling in your chest, pause, take one deep breath, and instead of looking outward with envy, look inward with a gentle curiosity. Ask that simple, revolutionary question: what is this feeling trying to teach me about me? This small shift, this quiet turning from criticism to curiosity, is the beginning of the end of the comparison game. But even as we learn to read this compass, we can still hear the voice that pushed us into the race in the first place. The relentless internal whisper that tells us we are not enough. The voice that holds up the scoreboard and always finds us wanting. You are not good enough. You are so far behind. Where does this voice come from? And how do we find peace from its constant echo? In our next journey, we will turn to face this voice. We will step into its echo chamber and finally ask, who are you?